Welcome to Shawn Thinking Out Loud. I'm Shawn Armstrong, retired United States Army infantryman, published author, martial arts instructor, and according to somebody today, I have no friends. That was supposed to hurt my feelings. Apparently, I was expected to stop whatever I was doing, stare into the middle distance, and reconsider every decision I've ever made since elementary school. I instead thought, that's pretty much how my life has always been. I've never had a large circle. I've known many people. I've worked with many people. I've served with people, trained with people, taught people, written for people, argued with people, been married, raised a family, lived in multiple places, traveled, deployed, moved to another country. I've had relationships. I've simply never needed a crowd following me around to confirm that I exist. Some people hear that you only have a few friends and assume something must be wrong. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you're antisocial. Maybe nobody likes you. Maybe you're difficult. Maybe you need to lower your standards. Maybe you should attend more parties, join more groups, smile at more idiots, and pretend to enjoy conversations that make you consider headbutting the table. I don't think having a small circle is automatically a bad thing. It may be bad if the person wants close relationships and can't form them. It may be bad if isolation comes from fear, depression, abuse, or circumstances outside the person's control. It may be unhealthy if someone is nobody he can call during a genuine emergency. But solitude is not the same as loneliness. Being alone is a condition. Loneliness is an experience. You can be alone and content. You can be surrounded by 50 people and feel completely disconnected. Anybody who's attended a mandatory Army function understands that distinction. There may be 300 people in the room. You're still spiritually alone beside the potato salad. I went looking for the study proving that people with fewer friends are more self-sufficient. There's no good study proving that simple claim. Having fewer friends doesn't automatically manufacture independence. You don't lose 3 contacts and suddenly learn how to rebuild an engine, balance a budget, and survive winter with a pocket knife. The evidence points in a more careful direction. Research has found that people with stronger personal autonomy are more likely to choose solitude for self-directed reasons. They spend time alone because they find value in it, enjoy it, use it to think, or use it to regulate themselves. In other words, self-sufficient people may be more comfortable choosing solitude. The solitude didn't necessarily create the self-sufficiency. The autonomy helped make solitude comfortable. That sounds closer to my experience. I don't need another person present to think. I don't need a crowd to eat. I don't need applause to write. I don't need strangers to approve my political opinion. I can travel alone, train alone, work alone, research alone, sit quietly, handle problems, make decisions. And when something goes wrong, I don't immediately create a committee so 5 people can help me avoid responsibility. Some people gain energy through constant social contact. Good for them. Other people find constant contact exhausting. Neither personality is automatically superior. A person with many friends can be independent. A person with few friends can be needy. A popular person can be honest. A private person can be manipulative. The number doesn't prove the character. What matters is the quality of the relationships and the reason behind the solitude. Did you choose a small circle because you value trust? Or did you drive everyone away and call the wreckage independence? Did you reject fake people? Or did you reject everyone who ever disagreed with you? Did you learn to stand on your own? Or are you hiding because relationships require patience, forgiveness, and occasional compromise? Those questions matter. I have standards. That reduces the number of people I want around me. I don't need people who smile in my face and hate me behind my back. I don't need thieves, liars, hypocrites, users. People who appear only when they want something. People who treat friendship as access to your time, money, contacts, skills, or emotional energy. I also don't need fake friendships maintained for appearances. A person takes a photograph with 15 people at a restaurant. He posts it. Everybody sees how social he is. 2 months later, he has a crisis. None of the 15 answer the phone, but the photograph received 412 likes. Perhaps one of the likes can drive him to the hospital. We've reached a point where people confuse visibility with connection. If other people see you with a crowd, you must be loved. If your profile contains photographs from parties, vacations, churches, restaurants, and events, your life must be full. If you don't display your social life, people assume you don't have one. The public performance has become more important than the private reality. That's not friendship, that's marketing. The same behavior appears in religion. People keep scolding me for not going to church. They tell me I need fellowship, community, teaching, accountability. Maybe, but I have a problem spending time around people who present themselves as pillars of Christian virtue on Sunday and behave like escaped zoo animals by Monday afternoon. They sing, they pray, raise their hands, quote scripture, shake the pastor's hand. Then they go home and abuse their family, steal from their employer, cheat on their spouse, or disappear into a bathroom stall to use drugs. Then somebody from the church asks you for money. Again. Apparently, God created the universe but remains trapped in a surprisingly unstable quarterly budget. I believe in charity. I believe in helping people. I believe in feeding people, supporting widows, helping children, helping veterans, supporting someone during illness, giving someone a chance. I don't believe coercion becomes charity because the pressure comes from the church or government. Charity requires choice. If somebody threatens, shames, manipulates, or legally compels you to give, that's not your charitable act. It's somebody else spending your resources according to his priorities. The Bible isn't vague about religious hypocrisy. Jesus repeatedly condemned public religious performance without private righteousness. He condemned people who granted recognition for their giving. He condemned religious leaders who burdened others while protecting themselves. Paul wrote that giving shouldn't be reluctant or under compulsion. The instructions are there. You don't need a motivational light show and a payment terminal to discover them. That doesn't mean every church is corrupt. It doesn't mean every pastor is a thief. It doesn't mean every Christian who attends church is a hypocrite. There are honest congregations, good pastors, faithful Christians, churches that feed people, help families, support missionaries, assist disaster victims, and keep their finances open. The problem isn't fellowship. The problem is pretending attendance proves virtue. I can sit in a church every Sunday and remain a liar. A thief can sing hymns. An abuser can quote scripture. A corrupt pastor can preach charity with one hand while reaching for the offering with the other. Location doesn't transform character. Then we have standards in daily life. People tolerate mediocrity and call it normal. Poor service, late work, bad communication, dishonest excuses, broken promises, avoidable mistakes. Nobody listens. Nobody reads instructions. Nobody accepts correction. Everybody says, that's just how it is. No, that's how it remains because everybody accepts it. If I give you money for a service, I expect the service. If you make a commitment, I expect you to keep it. If you don't know something, say you don't know. If somebody is teaching you, listen. If you make a mistake, correct it. Apparently, this makes me difficult. That's acceptable. A hammer is difficult when somebody wants a pillow. Living in Brazil has intensified this problem. I've been called ignorant here. In some ways, they're correct. I'm ignorant about many parts of Brazilian life. I wasn't born here. I didn't grow up in the school system. I didn't learn every local custom. I still encounter laws, habits, language, and institutions I don't fully understand. That's what ignorance means. A lack of knowledge. It's not automatically an insult. But I also get lectured by Brazilians about what America is like. People who have never lived in the United States explain Americans to me. They explain American culture, American politics, American poverty, American racism, American health care, American schools, American police, American foreign policy. They're standing in Brazil, speaking to an American veteran who spent most of his life in the United States, and they explain my country to me with the confidence of a man who watched 3 subtitled videos. That happens frequently. And when I try to explain something in return, some don't listen. They're not trying to learn. They're waiting to speak again. That connects to a serious education problem. The 2024 Indicador de Alfabetismo Funcional reports that nearly 30% of Brazilians between 15 and 64 are functionally illiterate. That doesn't mean nearly 30% can't recognize letters or read a simple sentence. It means they struggle to use reading, writing, numerical, or digital information in normal daily tasks. They may decode words but struggle to understand, compare, calculate, interpret, or apply the information. The claim that Brazil is currently ranked 79th in education needs correction. There's no single current official ranking covering every aspect of education that cleanly places Brazil 79th. That figure appears to come from an older International Education Development Index. A better current measure is the OECD's PISA assessment. Brazilian 15-year-olds scored well below OECD averages in mathematics, reading, and science in 2022. Only 27% reached the basic proficiency level in mathematics. Half reached it in reading. 45% reached it in science. Those numbers aren't an insult. They're a national emergency. The United States shouldn't feel superior. American reading performance has also declined. Large portions of American adults perform at low literacy levels. Schools argue over ideology while children lose the ability to read a paragraph, explain an argument, or perform basic mathematics. We replace parts of education with politics, technology, testing rituals, social promotion, and administrative performance. Then everybody acts surprised when adults can't distinguish evidence from a meme. So today we're going to talk about friends. Real friends. Fake friends. Solitude. Self-sufficiency. Church. Charity. Standards. Education. Brazil. America. And why being disliked by foolish people may be one of the cheapest forms of quality control available. If having friends requires me to tolerate hypocrites, thieves, liars, and idiots, I'm comfortable with a smaller Christmas card list. Before the final salute, A soldier's final mission isn't on the battlefield, it's at home. This is a story about duty, distance, family, and the hard words people wait too long to say. Robert Collins spent a lifetime answering the call, but when a terminal diagnosis arrives, the war he has to face isn't overseas. It's in the rooms he left behind, with the family that learned to live around his absence. He has 4 children, and each one carries a different version of the same injury. A hardened police officer, a blacksmith with forgiveness still burning in him, a musician who turned rebellion into melody, and a daughter who tried to hold the family together when everyone else started falling apart. Before time runs out, Robert has to do what no medal, no rank, and no old story can do for him. He has to face the people he loves. He has to hear what he missed, and he has to decide whether pride is worth carrying into the grave. Before the Final Salute is about family, legacy, and the kind of courage nobody pins to your chest. The courage to admit you were wrong. The courage to forgive. The courage to say, I understand, before the last chance disappears. This is for readers who want emotional fiction without the cheap tricks. Family, legacy, service. The quiet damage of silence, the harder work of making peace. At 92 pages, this book hits fast and stays with you. Some stories don't need 500 pages to leave a mark. Written by Shawn Armstrong, Before the Final Salute carries the weight of service, family, and age without turning any of it into greeting card mush. This is a story about people trying to make peace with the past before the past becomes permanent. Scan the QR code and get Before the Final Salute on Amazon, because the words you don't say can become the ghost you never outrun. Before the Final Salute by Shawn Armstrong, available now. Let's begin with the accusation. You have no friends. What does that actually mean? Does it mean nobody knows you? Nobody cares about you? Nobody speaks to you? Nobody respects you? Nobody would help you? Or does it mean you don't have a visible crowd? People use friendship as a social score. A person with many friends must be likable. A person with few friends must be defective. That assumption belongs in high school. Unfortunately, many adults never emotionally graduated. They received a diploma, found employment, developed back pain, and continued measuring human value through popularity. Friendship quantity can matter. Social connection protects health. The United States Surgeon General reviewed research showing that stronger social connection is associated with better health and survival. Isolation and chronic loneliness are associated with heart disease, stroke, depression, dementia, and premature death. That evidence shouldn't be ignored because solitude sounds tough. Human beings are social animals, even the independent ones. But social connection isn't the same as maintaining a large crowd. You need meaningful relationships, trust, support, honesty, somebody who notices when something is wrong, somebody who tells you the truth, somebody you can help, somebody who can help you. That network may include family, a spouse, former military friends, students, neighbors, readers, or 2 close friends rather than 20. Quality matters. Research examines friendship and well-being repeatedly finds that good relationships matter more than collecting names. A person can have hundreds of social contacts and no dependable support. Another person can have 3 relationships and never face a crisis alone. The online world made the numbers meaningless. Friend, follower, subscriber, connection, contact. The platforms use relationship language for business metrics. A person clicks a button. Facebook calls him your friend. You may never speak privately, never meet, never know his address, never learn whether his name is real, but he's listed beside your cousin, your army buddy, and somebody you would trust with your life. The word has been emptied. A friend isn't somebody who knows your public opinions. A friend knows your conduct. He knows whether you keep your word, whether you show up, whether you disappear when trouble begins, whether you become generous after 2 drinks or turn into a complete asshole. A friend has seen you without the edited version, the tired version, angry version, grieving version, broke version, wrong version, the version that can't produce a clever answer. That relationship requires time, shared experience, risk. You can't create it by pressing accept. The research on solitude provides a useful correction. A 2022 study in PLOS1 followed participants through daily diary reports. Researchers distinguished between preferring to be alone and choosing solitude for self-determined reasons. Those aren't identical. One person may avoid others through fear or resentment. Another may choose time alone because it helps him think, regulate emotion, work, pray, create, or recover. The researchers found that dispositional autonomy was associated with self-determined motivation for solitude. The effects were small, and not every model remained statistically significant for all controls. That's science speaking carefully. Not people with no friends are superior survival machines. The findings suggest that autonomous people can experience solitude as chosen and useful rather than imposed and miserable. That's a meaningful distinction. I don't wake up every morning devastated because nobody invited me to discuss soccer for 4 hours. I'm not sitting beside the telephone hoping somebody calls. I have work, books, research, training, family, a podcast, projects, ideas. Solitude isn't empty when you have something worth doing. Some people can't be alone because silence removes the audience. Without the audience, they must confront themselves. They can't tell whether they're interesting unless somebody reacts. They can't enjoy an experience unless somebody sees evidence of it. They can't eat a meal without photographing it. They can't exercise without posting the workout. They can't give to charity without announcing the amount. They can't pray without producing content. That's not connection. That's dependency dressed up as popularity. Self-sufficiency means you can perform the ordinary functions of your life without demanding constant rescue. You can cook something, clean something, handle money, make a telephone call, read instructions, solve a simple problem, tolerate inconvenience, manage emotion, spend a day without needing another person to entertain you. It doesn't mean you never need anyone. Everybody needs someone eventually. The self-sufficient person knows when to ask for help. The dependent person asks before trying. The isolated person sometimes refuses help even when he needs it. Those are different failures. Military service teaches interdependence, not complete independence. An infantryman depends on the unit. The unit depends on the infantryman performing his job. You carry your equipment. Maintain your weapon. Know your sector. Stay awake. Nobody wants the man who claims independence while everyone else carries his load. Civilian friends should work the same way. I don't need a friend to live my life for me. I need a friend who can rely on me and whom I can rely on when the situation requires. That's not a large circle. That's a strong circle. There's another truth. Standards can shrink your circle. Honesty eliminates people who require lies. Sobriety eliminates people whose entire social life depends on intoxication. Responsibility eliminates people who need someone else to blame. Boundaries eliminate users. Success eliminates some jealous people. Failure eliminates some shallow people. Time eliminates the rest. When you're young, friendship can mean proximity. Same school, same unit, same neighborhood, same workplace, same bar, same hobby. As life changes, proximity disappears. Then the relationship must survive intentionally. Many don't. That doesn't always mean anyone betrayed anyone. Life moves. People marry, relocate, raise children, change schedules, develop health problems, care for parents. Friendships fade. Adults who treat every faded relationship as treason create unnecessary bitterness. But fake people exist. They praise you publicly and undermine you privately. They agree in person and mock you later. They collect information during friendship and use it during conflict. They remain close while you're useful. When the usefulness ends, so does the relationship. I'd rather identify that person early. A smaller circle gives fewer people access to private information, fewer opportunities for betrayal, fewer obligations maintained only through guilt, more time for the people who actually matter. However, standards can become an excuse. A person says, I have no friends because my standards are high. Maybe. Or maybe every disagreement becomes disrespect. Every mistake becomes stupidity. Every weakness becomes moral failure. Every person is rejected before trust has time to develop. Standards must include standards for yourself. Am I honest? Dependable? Patient? Do I listen? Do I apologize? Do I keep confidence? Do I give without keeping score? Can I tolerate differences that don't involve dishonesty or abuse? You can't demand perfect friends while providing an unfinished version of yourself. Everybody is unfinished, including me. I don't tolerate stupidity well. That doesn't mean I never say something stupid. I have. I probably will again. The difference is what happens after correction. Do I learn? Or do you defend the stupidity because admitting error bruises your pride? I can remain friends with somebody who makes a mistake. I can't remain close to someone who makes dishonesty a lifestyle. I can tolerate ignorance. Nobody knows everything. I can't tolerate proud ignorance that refuses evidence. A small circle isn't a tragedy. An empty life may be. The number doesn't tell you which one you have. The goal isn't to collect friends. The goal is to become the kind of person worthy of the right ones. Too many people are trying to live as a Facebook profile. Not live a life and occasionally post about it. Live for the profile. The photograph comes first. The experience comes second. The restaurant must produce a picture. The vacation must produce an album. The workout must produce evidence. The relationship must produce matching status updates. The church visit must produce a scripture quotation. The charity must produce a photograph of the giver helping someone who probably didn't ask to become part of the giver's marketing campaign. People curate themselves. They select victories, Google angles, clean rooms, happy relationships, children smiling during the 3 seconds between arguments. The profile becomes an advertisement for a life that may not exist outside the frame. That doesn't mean every social media profile is fake. Research involving more than 10,000 Facebook users found that more authentic online self-expression was associated with greater life satisfaction. People who presented themselves in ways closer to their actual personalities tended to report better well-being. That's almost offensively sensible. Pretending to be somebody else's work. Eventually, maintaining the character becomes exhausting. Social media can reveal real personality. Sometimes a person isn't creating a false version. Sometimes he's showing exactly who he is. That may be worse. The argument isn't that every photograph is fraudulent. The argument is that platforms encourage performance. Likes reward presentation. Attention rewards exaggeration. Algorithms reward emotion. The person begins asking, what will people respond to? Not, what's true? Popularity becomes measurable. Followers, comments, reactions, shares, views. A teenager can compare his social value with everyone he knows before breakfast. Adults do it too. They simply pretend it's marketing. People who worry excessively about popularity often become dishonest because popularity requires adaptation. This group wants one opinion. That group wants another. At work, one face. At home, another. At church, another. Online, another. The person becomes a collection of audience-specific masks. Adaptation isn't always hypocrisy. You speak differently to a child than to a commanding officer. You use different language during a funeral than at a bar. Maturity includes understanding context. Hypocrisy begins when the underlying principles change according to who's watching. A man preaches family values in public and abuses his family in private. The woman posts motivational statements about kindness and destroys people through gossip. The politician condemns wealth while building personal wealth. Bernie. The business owner praises workers and cheats them. The pastor preaches sacrifice and lives beyond the congregation's means. That's two-faced behavior. One face serves reputation, the other reveals character. Popularity encourages this because the popular person has more to protect. A person who depends on approval must constantly read the room. Which opinion is permitted? Which joke is safe? Which friend has become unpopular? Which cause is trending? Which word now singles virtue? Soon the person isn't speaking, he's performing audience maintenance. I don't care enough about popularity to maintain the character. That doesn't mean I care about nothing. I care about accuracy, my family, my work, my books, my students, my country, my faith, my standards. I simply don't care enough about strangers' approval to rearrange those things for applause. People misunderstand that phrase. I don't care about what people think. Everyone cares to some degree. If nobody cared about what anyone thought, society would collapse by Tuesday. Reputation matters. Trust matters. Professional conduct matters. Family opinion can matter. The judgment of people you respect should matter. What I reject is giving every person an equal vote over my identity. A stranger who knows one sentence about me doesn't receive the same influence as my wife. A commenter who watched 30 seconds doesn't outweigh decades of experience. A person offended because I corrected him doesn't become an authority over my character. Popular people often develop large circles containing shallow relationships. That doesn't make them bad. Some people genuinely connect easily. They remember names, bring groups together, enjoy social activity. Their ability is valuable, but public popularity can conceal private loneliness. If everyone knows the performance, who knows the person? The performer may not know anymore. He becomes the version that receives approval. The online profile says he's happy. The public photographs prove it. His private life says otherwise. But admitting unhappiness would contradict the brand. Fake friendship thrives in this environment. People gather around status, access, money, influence, attractiveness, entertainment. When the status changes, the crowd changes. Athletes discover it after retirement. Soldiers discover it after leaving the unit. Politicians discover it after losing office. Wealthy people discover it after losing money. Famous people discover it when the audience moves to somebody younger. The crowd loved the position. The person happened to be standing in it. The real friendship survives the reduction in entertainment value. A friend can sit through boredom, illness, repetition, aging, grief. He doesn't need every interaction to create content. Social media also produces comparison. You see everybody else's successes at once. New house, promotion, wedding, vacation, graduation, perfect family. You compare their edited highlights with your complete life, including the bills, arguments, mistakes, and unwashed dishes. Then you conclude that everyone else is doing better. They're not. They simply don't post the part where the car payment bounced and the couple fought in the parking lot. A profile doesn't need to be intentionally false to be misleading. Selection creates the distortion. Show only the best 10 minutes of every week and the year appears magnificent. Some people become angry when you refuse the performance. They think privacy is secrecy. If you don't post the relationship must be failing. If you don't announce charity, you must not give. If you don't attend public events, you must have no social life. Privacy doesn't require explanation. Some things become weaker when exposed to an audience. A private conversation, a family reconciliation, a charitable act, a religious experience, a marriage problem. The audience doesn't need access. The audience will consume the moment and move on. You still have to live with it. I'd rather have 2 people who know the truth than 2,000 people reacting to the advertisement. A public profile tells people what you want to see. Character is what remains when nobody is watching. This is Into the Beam by Shawn Armstrong. It's a short, reader-friendly book on C.S. Lewis focused on faith, reason, and the Christian life. If you've ever wanted an accessible guide to Lewis without getting buried in academic language, this book gives you that path. It invites readers to walk with Lewis through doubt, suffering, morality, imagination, and the life of faith. What is this book really doing? It takes readers into the thought and life of C.S. Lewis, but it does it in plain language. The description makes clear that Lewis was not a man who floated into faith on emotion alone. He argued, he doubted, he suffered, he asked hard questions. This book follows that path and gives readers a guided walk through Lewis's biggest concerns: morality, pain, joy, scripture, and what it means to live as a Christian with both mind and heart engaged. C.S. Lewis still matters because he meets people where they actually live. He speaks to faith by showing that Christianity is not just a mood or a tradition, it's something to be lived. He speaks to reason by taking questions seriously. Lewis believed the truth could stand up under pressure. And he speaks to the Christian life because he's not a detached theorist. He grew from a reluctant convert into a Christian writer who still helps people think clearly, hope honestly, and keep going. This book is built for readers who want a clean entry point into C.S. Lewis. It's especially useful for Christians who want a short guide, readers who are curious but don't want heavy scholarship, and people working through questions about suffering, morality, and the life of faith. It's compact at 89 pages, available in paperback and Kindle, and written to be approachable from start to finish. Shawn Armstrong is a retired U.S. Army veteran, lifelong student of history, and prolific author whose works span military affairs, politics, economics, religion, martial arts, American history, and the unexplained. Drawing on more than 2 decades of military service and a lifetime of study, Armstrong writes with clarity, discipline, and practical judgment. His books form a lasting record of the knowledge he's earned through experience, research, and reflection, created to inform readers, challenge assumptions, and pass something worthwhile to the next generation. If you want a short, thoughtful introduction to C.S. Lewis, this is a solid place to start. Into the Beam is available now on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. Scan the QR code on screen or use the direct Amazon link. Read it for yourself and spend time with one of the most important Christian thinkers of the modern era through a guide written to be clear, direct, and useful.
I keep getting told I need to go to church. The statement usually arrives with the confidence of somebody who believes physical attendance completes the spiritual requirement. Get inside the building, sit down, sing, listen, give money, repeat next week. Church can be valuable. A healthy church creates fellowship, teaching, mutual assistance, prayer, accountability, charity, community. It brings generations together. It gives people somewhere to turn during death, illness, poverty, addiction, marriage problems, and family crisis. The Bible doesn't present Christianity as complete isolation. Believers gathered, shared meals, supported one another, taught, corrected, prayed. The letter to the Hebrews warns believers against abandoning fellowship. The early church was a community. Anybody who says Christianity consists only of sitting alone with the Bible is leaving out part of the Bible. But anybody who says attendance proves faith also missed the book. Jesus reserved some of the harshest criticism for religious hypocrites. People who displayed righteousness in public while exploiting others. People who loved status, recognition, titles, special seating, public prayer, visible giving. They cleaned the outside and left the inside corrupt. The problem didn't disappear because churches installed air conditioning and electronic payment systems. I've watched people behave as pillars of Christian virtue on Sunday and become entirely different people during the week. The public face knows Scripture. The private face knows excuses. A man raises his hand during worship and raises those same hands against his wife at home. A woman condemns sexual immorality while conducting an affair. A business owner prays with employees and cheats them. A church leader speaks about sobriety and hides an addiction. A congregation condemns the sins of outsiders and protects the misconduct of insiders. These aren't arguments against Christianity. They're examples of Christians violating Christianity. That distinction matters. A hypocrite doesn't disprove the standard. He proves the standard exists by pretending to meet it. When somebody produces counterfeit money, we don't conclude real money never existed. We conclude somebody knew the real thing had value. But counterfeit religion still causes damage. A person abused inside a church doesn't experience the hypocrisy as an academic distinction. A family pressured for money doesn't care that the theology was technically sound. A child protected less than the institution will remember which priority the adults chose. Churches must be judged by conduct. Do leaders disclose finances? Is authority accountable? Are allegations investigated? Are children protected? Do leaders admit mistakes? Does the church serve people outside itself? Does it treat poverty as a human problem or a fundraising photograph? Then comes money. Churches need money. Buildings cost money. Electricity costs money. Staff require support. Charity programs require funding. Mission work requires transportation, food, housing, and supplies. The existence of an offering doesn't prove corruption. The problem is coercion, shame, fear, promises of guaranteed financial return, claiming that God will punish someone for failing to give enough, treating wealth as proof of faith, using Scripture to pressure poor people into financing the lifestyle of a leader. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians that each person should give what he decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion. That sentence is inconvenient for any religious salesman trying to turn guilt into recurring revenue. Jesus spoke about giving in secret rather than performing charity to receive praise. He condemned people who devoured widows' houses while displaying long prayers. The biblical criticism isn't subtle. Who knew God was so horrible with money? Every month, another emergency, another campaign, another special offering, another building fund, another pastor explaining that faith requires a larger vehicle. Again, some churches publish budgets, use independent audits, pay modest salaries, feed families, support shelters, help addicts, provide counseling, repair homes, assist during disasters. Those institutions deserve support. The point isn't to refuse every church. The point is to stop suspending judgment because the person asking for money owns a Bible. Charity belongs to the giver. Government redistribution isn't charity from the taxpayer. It may be public policy. It may be necessary assistance. It may be constitutionally authorized. It may produce good results. But the politician spending compelled taxes has not personally performed charity. The same principle applies to church pressure. If a pastor manipulates a person through guilt or spiritual fear, the resulting payment may fund charitable work. The method remains coercive. True giving involves choice, sacrifice, intention. You examine the need. Choose the recipient. Give without demanding praise. You can give directly. Buy food. Pay a bill. Support a family. Help a veteran. Fund an educational program. Assist a shelter. Pay for medicine. Give time. Teach a skill. Offer transportation. Charity isn't limited to handing money to an institution and assuming God handles the accounting. Direct giving also requires judgment. Some requests are scams. Some recipients misuse help. Some people learn dependency. Compassion doesn't prohibit discernment. A person may need food today and a plan tomorrow. Giving money without understanding the problem can prolong the problem. That doesn't mean hardening your heart. It means helping intelligently. The church can organize that help better than an individual in some circumstances. It knows the community, can pool resources, verify needs, provide continuity. That's one reason healthy churches matter. I reject dishonest churches. I don't reject the value of honest community. There's a danger in my own attitude. If I see hypocrisy everywhere, I can use it as an excuse to avoid accountability. It's easy to say, I don't attend because everyone there is fake. Everyone? No, that's too easy. Some may be fake. Others are struggling. A man battling addiction may attend because he knows he needs help. A marriage may be damaged by trying to heal. The person who fails on Monday may sincerely repent on Sunday. Hypocrisy means pretending to possess a virtue while refusing its demands. Failure alone isn't hypocrisy. Christianity assumes people fail. That's why repentance exists. I have to distinguish the person who falls and admits it from the person who builds a public identity around condemning sins he privately protects. One needs help. The other needs exposure. I don't need a hypocrite telling me what God wants, but I should remain open to correction from an honest person, even when that person is imperfect. Otherwise, I have standards becomes nobody may question me. That's not independence, that's pride. Read the book, study it, ask questions, Examine history. Understand the context. Don't surrender your judgment to a charismatic preacher. Don't surrender it to an internet atheist either. Both can speak confidently while knowing almost nothing. Faith should make conduct more honest, not merely make the performance more convincing. Sunday attendance isn't a weekly reset button that erases what you do to people on Monday. That brings us to standards. People hate standards when standards expose what they tolerate in themselves. A standard creates a line. On time or late. Honest or dishonest. Complete or incomplete. Competent or incompetent. Safe or unsafe. Promise kept or promise broken. Without a line, every failure becomes negotiable. The work was late, but I was tired. The service was poor, but that's normal. The information was false, but the intention was good. The promise was broken, but circumstances changed. The procedure was ignored, but nothing bad happened. Sometimes excuses are legitimate. Life happens. Equipment fails. People become sick. Emergencies occur. A reasonable person allows for reality. A standard isn't a refusal to understand circumstances. It's a refusal to turn circumstances into a permanent exemption. In the Army, standards were written because consequences existed. Weapons maintenance, physical fitness, uniforms, accountability, safety, movement times, communication. Some standards become bureaucratic nonsense. Anybody who served knows the military can produce a 12-page introduction describing how to place a 3-page instruction in a binder. But many standards mattered. A weapon that fails during combat doesn't care that the soldier had a difficult week. A missing piece of equipment doesn't become available because everybody agrees the responsible person is normally nice. Civilian life often tolerates failure until a tragedy makes the standard visible. A worker ignores maintenance. A machine fails. A driver texts. Somebody dies. A contractor uses cheap material. A building collapses. Then everyone asks why standards weren't enforced. Because before the consequence, enforcement seemed rude. If I pay for a service, I expect competent service. That's not arrogance. An agreement occurred. I give money. You provide the service. If you can't provide it, tell me before taking the money. The problem appears when poor service becomes culturally accepted. The worker says, "That's how it is." The customer says, "There's nothing you can do." The business has no incentive to improve. Mediocrity becomes tradition. People call me intolerant because I refuse to celebrate normal incompetence. I don't want excuses. I want correction. Tell me what happened. Fix it. Prevent repetition. That's how functioning institutions work. But standards must remain proportional. A waiter forgetting a drink is not a moral criminal. A clerk making a mistake doesn't deserve public humiliation. A language misunderstanding isn't proof of stupidity. A person learning a task requires patience. The standard includes how I treat people while enforcing the standard. I can demand correction without treating a human being like garbage. That becomes difficult when the person responds with arrogance. Ignorance combined with humility can be taught. Ignorance combined with arrogance creates podcasts, sometimes mine. I've been called ignorant in Brazil. That's partly accurate. I'm ignorant of things I haven't learned. So is everyone. Knowledge is specific. A surgeon may be ignorant about electrical wiring. An electrician may be ignorant about surgery. A Brazilian may understand Brazilian law better than I do. I may understand American military institutions better than he does. The moral failure isn't ignorance. It's refusing to recognize the boundary. My favorite interaction is a Brazilian who has never lived in the United States explaining America to me. Not asking, explaining. He watched American television, read a translated article, saw political videos, maybe visited Orlando for 10 days. Now he possesses the complete American experience. I was born there, raised there, served in its army for 23 years, lived under its laws, worked, paid taxes, raised a family, traveled through different states, but apparently I've been waiting for somebody in Hedonia to explain what Americans are really like. Americans do this too. They visit Rio de Janeiro, take a photograph beside Christ the Redeemer, drink something on the beach, and return home as experts on Brazil. They never opened a bank account, dealt with immigration, registered a business, used the public health system, paid Brazilian taxes, lived in the interior, learned the language properly, but they saw Carnival. Expert status achieved. Travel status can increase knowledge. Tourism can also create confident ignorance. When somebody lectures me about America, I listen long enough to identify whether he knows anything. Sometimes he raises a valid point. Distance can reveal things insiders ignore. Foreigners sometimes see American contradictions clearly. But if the person repeats slogans and refuses correction from someone with direct experience, the conversation has no purpose. He's not learning. He's using me as furniture during his speech. That's one reason my circle remains small. Conversation requires listening. Most people wait. They don't listen. They wait for the noise to stop so they can resume speaking. Listening doesn't mean agreeing. It means accurately understanding before responding. Repeat the other person's point in a way he'd recognize. Ask questions. Separate what he said from what you assumed. Social media train the opposite behavior. Respond immediately. Find the weakest interpretation. Attach a label. Perform for the audience. Standards become offensive in that culture because correction threatens identity. Tell someone the fact is wrong, and he hears you're a bad person. Tell him the service failed, and he hears you think you're better than me. Tell him to listen, and he hears you want control. No, sometimes the fact is wrong. The service failed, you didn't listen. Correct the behavior and continue. Too many adults protect ego at the expense of competence. They'd rather remain wrong than appear wrong for 30 seconds. I've seen too much to organize my life around other people's opinions. War, death, marriage, grief, failure, starting over, moving to another country, building new work. When someone has survived real consequences, social disapproval becomes less impressive. A stranger says I'm unpopular. I've received worse news. People say, walk a mile in my shoes. Most won't. They want the conclusion without the distance, the authority without the experience, the recognition without the work. That's why standards bother them. Standards expose distance between the public claim and the private effort. However, contempt can become a drug. Once you decide everyone is stupid, every interaction confirms it. You stop noticing competence, kindness, humility, intelligence. You become the person who can't learn because every teacher fails your personal test. I have to guard against that. The world contains many idiots. It also contains people who know things I don't. A standard should help distinguish them, not automatically classify everyone together. If my standards leave no room for human imperfection, they're not standards, they're excuses for isolation. I want honest people, competent people, people willing to learn, people capable of listening, people who keep commitments. They don't have to share every belief. They don't need my personality. Frankly, one of me is enough administrative burden for most communities. If you're ignorant but willing to learn, we can talk. If you're wrong but honest, we can talk. If you made a mistake and correct it, we can talk. If you lie, manipulate, steal, or proudly refuse evidence, the conversation becomes optional. Standards should protect your life from bad character. They shouldn't protect your ego from every imperfect human being.
This is Political History of Brazil, Colonialism to Democracy by Shawn Armstrong. This book walks through the major political turns that shaped Brazil, from colonial foundations to the modern democratic era. If you want a direct, readable guide to how Brazil got here and why its politics still carry the weight of inequality, corruption, centralization, and polarization, this book gives you that roadmap. What does this book actually cover? It starts with the foundations, including inequality, clientelism, and the older political habits that still shape Brazil. From there, it moves through independence, Republican instability, the Vargas years, military rule, and the democratic transition. It also deals with the 1988 Constitution, corruption scandals, and the continuing fights over political power in modern Brazil. The book organizes Brazil's story around major turning points. First come the foundations, including colonial rule, independence, centralization, and the deep social inequalities built into the country's development. Then come the years of crisis and control, from the First Republic to Vargas and later military dictatorship. Finally, the book turns to modern democracy, the 1988 Constitution, corruption scandals like Operation Car Wash, and the current era of political division. The book is for readers who want political history without the fluff. It works well for students, people living in Brazil, travelers who want context, and readers who care about Latin American politics. It also helps if you want to understand why modern Brazilian politics can feel so unstable, so personalized, and so heavily shaped by older structures. At 104 pages, it stays compact and readable. This book comes from Shawn Armstrong, whose work covers history, politics, and philosophy. That matters because this book is trying to do two things at once. It gives the reader the timeline, but it also gives the reader the political meaning behind the timeline. If you want a fast but useful guide to Brazil's political development, this book is built for that job. If you want a sharper understanding of Brazil, this book is a good place to start. Political History of Brazil, Colonialism to Democracy is available on Amazon. Scan the QR code on screen or use the Amazon link to order your copy. Read the history, understand the institutions, and make more sense of the political battles still shaping Brazil today.
Now we reach the uncomfortable part, education in Brazil. The current evidence is serious. The 2024 Indicador de Alfabetismo Funcional reports that nearly 30% of Brazilians between 15 and 64 face functional illiteracy. That's almost 3 out of 10, more than 1 in 4. Functional illiteracy doesn't mean a person is completely unable to read or write his name. The INAF measure examines whether people can use written, numerical, and digital information in normal life. Can the person interpret a text, produce a basic written explanation, compare information, perform a calculation, understand instructions, use information to solve a problem? A person may read words aloud and still fail to understand the argument. That distinction explains a great deal about modern politics in every country. Brazil has made educational progress across decades. School access expanded. Illiteracy declined from earlier historical levels. More people reach secondary and higher education. Brazil has excellent universities, researchers, engineers, physicians, attorneys, teachers, and skilled professionals. I've met intelligent Brazilians, educated Brazilians, curious Brazilians, people who read, listen, study, work, solve problems. National statistics don't define every individual. Using a literacy figure to declare Brazilians stupid would itself be stupid. But a national functional illiteracy rate near 30% has consequences: employment, productivity, political participation, health decisions, financial decisions, legal understanding, technology, public safety. A person who struggles to interpret information becomes easier to deceive. He signs contracts he doesn't understand, shares claims he can't evaluate, votes based on personalities and slogans, follows instructions incorrectly, falls for scams, depends on intermediaries. Education isn't merely a school issue. It determines how much freedom a citizen can exercise. A person who can't understand a document may possess a legal right and still be unable to use it. The 79th in education line requires context. It appears connected to an older education development index ranking rather than a current complete ranking of national education systems. There's no single universal education scoreboard measuring everything from preschool access through universities and adult literacy. The current OECD PISA result offer more useful detail. PISA tested 15-year-olds from 81 participating countries and economies in 2022. Brazil scored below the OECD average in mathematics, reading, and science. Only 27% of Brazilian students reached at least level 2 in mathematics. The OECD average was 69%. Level 2 is not advanced mathematics. It's the baseline at which students begin using simple mathematical reasoning in real-life situations. Half of Brazilian students reached level 2 in reading. That means half didn't. At least at level 2, a student should be able to identify the main idea in a moderately long text, locate information using stated criteria, and reflect on purpose when directed. 45% reached level 2 in science. The OECD average was 76%. Only around 1% of Brazilian students reached the top levels in mathematics and science. 2% reached the top levels in reading. Those numbers should terrify political leaders, not because every child needs to become a physicist, because a modern country requires people capable of understanding systems, evidence, cause, risk, finance, and technology. The PISA student surveys also support my complaint about listening. 38% of Brazilian students reported that students don't listen to the teacher in most or all mathematics lessons. The OECD average was 30%. 45% reported being distracted by their own digital devices. 40% reported distraction from other students' devices. You can't teach someone who refuses attention. The teacher can have skill, books, technology, curriculum. The student still has to listen. Poverty matters. Brazilian schools face inequality. Some lack resources. Teachers face poor conditions. Families face instability. Students work. Transportation is difficult. Violence disrupts communities. COVID damaged education. All of that matters. But poverty can't become a complete explanation for refusing to listen. Poor students throughout history have learned. People have studied under terrible conditions. Lack of resources creates barriers. Attitude still matters within those barriers. The danger is treating students only as victims of systems. That removes responsibility from the person whose choices determine whether any lesson enters his head. A student may not control the building. He controls whether he attempts the assignment. Parents also matter. A school can't repair every failure in the home. If nobody reads, nobody values education, nobody enforces attendance, nobody limits phone use, the teacher receives a child already trained to reject discipline. Then society blames the teacher for failing to perform a miracle during 45 minutes with 30 students. Brazil's poverty and inequality do connect to education. Poor education limits productivity. Low productivity limits wages. Low wages limit family resources. Weak institutions waste public money. The cycle repeats. Education alone won't solve every problem. An educated thief is still a thief. An educated politician can steal with better grammar. But no country builds broad prosperity while nearly 30% of working-age adults struggle with functional literacy. The solution requires basic literacy, numeracy, teacher training, classroom discipline, attendance, early childhood development, parental responsibility, technical education, honest measurement, and a culture that values competence more than credentials. Brazil produces people with degrees who still struggle to reason. So does America. A diploma proves that an institution awarded a diploma. It doesn't automatically prove knowledge. Now let's turn the mirror towards the United States. American education is also failing large numbers of people. The 2024 National Assessment of Educational Progress found that fourth grade reading scores were lower than in 2022 and 5 points lower than in 2019. 12th grade reading was 3 points lower than in 2019 and 10 points lower than the first comparable assessment in 1992. The OECD's 2023 Adult Skills Survey found that 28% of American adults between 16 and 65 performed at level 1 or below in literacy. That's not identical to Brazil's INAF measure, so don't compare the percentages though they came from the same test. But the American figure demonstrates the same broad problem. Millions of adults struggle with complex reading and information. American adults perform below the international average in numeracy and adaptive problem solving. Young American adults also scored below OECD averages in literacy, numeracy, and adaptive problem solving. America can't sit on a porch mocking Brazil while the roof burns. I believe American schools have replaced too much education with indoctrination. That's my interpretation. The test scores prove declining skills. They don't prove one political cause. COVID disruptions mattered. Phones matter. Family breakdown matters. Chronic absenteeism matters. Weak discipline matters. Teaching methods matter. Social promotion matters. Curriculum matters. Political activism can matter. The problem is that schools spend limited time on ideological disputes while students fail basic reading. A child who can't understand a paragraph doesn't need another slogan about becoming a global citizen. He needs phonics, vocabulary, practice, books, correction. Students should learn the history of slavery, civil rights, communism, capitalism, religion, government, war, race, sex, economics. They should encounter difficult subjects. Education isn't indoctrination merely because it includes ideas parents dislike. Indoctrination begins when the school presents one approved political conclusion, discourages competing evidence, and treats disagreement as moral defect. Teaching presents the argument. Indoctrination assigns the emotion. America increasingly produces people who can repeat political vocabulary without defining it. Fascism, socialism, racism, colonialism, capitalism, democracy. They use the words as weapons. Ask for a definition and the conversation turns into interpretive dance. This creates my friend problem. If the pool consists of people who refuse to read, refuse to listen, repeat slogans, and lecture me about subjects they haven't studied, I don't need to expand the circle. That's not about nationality. I find those people in Brazil, the United States, the military, universities, churches, politics, social media. Stupidity obtained a passport long before I did. A Brazilian person isn't stupid because Brazil's education system performs poorly. An American isn't intelligent because the United States has wealthy universities. Individuals still demonstrate character and ability. I choose people based on conduct. Can you listen? Can you learn? Can you admit ignorance? Can you support a claim? Can you disagree without lying? Can you perform what you promised? What makes the pool smaller? Fine. Do I need a crowd? I need conversations that don't make me reconsider language as a human invention. Education creates the possibility of freedom. Listening makes education possible. Humility makes listening possible. A person who believes he already knows everything can't be taught, regardless of how many schools he attended. This is The Unmaking of the American Citizen by Shawn Armstrong. It's a political and cultural diagnosis of what's happened to the American idea of citizenship over the last century. Shawn Armstrong argues that the country changed regimes without changing its constitution, moving from progressivism to the New Deal order, then to neoliberalism, identity politics, and the Great Awakening. If you want a serious critique with a clear conservative argument behind it, this book gets straight to work. The core argument is simple and brutal. America kept the shell of the Constitution, but changed the way the regime operates. Instead of equal citizenship, we got expanding bureaucracy, cultural management, and institutions that classify people by identity groups. Shawn Armstrong shows how the promise of fairness and freedom turned into something else. Hollowed out communities, growing despair, and a permanent fight between approved victims and approved villains. The book maps the road clearly. First comes progressivism and the New Deal order, where centralized management becomes normal. Then comes neoliberalism, which uses global markets, free trade, and permanent war to reshape the country and weaken the middle class. Then comes identity politics and the Great Awakening, where equal citizenship gets replaced by a moral hierarchy of victim and oppressor. Shawn Armstrong treats this as a regime story, not random chaos. This book is not just a complaint. It makes a case for conservative renewal. Shawn Armstrong argues for recovering equal citizenship under the law, relearning Republican virtue, reviving Christian and natural law traditions, and building local institutions that can outlast failing national systems. He also tells conservatives to stop apologizing for who they are and to start defending the rights and duties of citizenship without flinching. This book is aimed at readers who feel the ground shifted beneath the country and want more than bumper sticker politics. It's for conservatives, Christians, independents, and anybody else who's tired of being handled like a demographic category. If you want a readable explanation of how we got here and a conservative answer that goes beyond complaining, this book fits. Shawn Armstrong is a retired U.S. Army veteran, lifelong student of history, and prolific author whose work spans military affairs, politics, economics, religion, martial arts, American history, and the unexplained. Drawing on more than 2 decades of military service and a lifetime of study, Armstrong writes with clarity, discipline, and practical judgment. His books form a lasting record of the knowledge he has earned through experience, research, and reflection, created to inform readers, challenge assumptions, and pass something worthwhile to the next generation. If you want to understand how America moved from citizenship to bureaucratic management and identity politics, scan the QR code or use the Amazon link and grab The Unmaking of the American Citizen. This is a serious political book with a clear conservative answer. Shawn Armstrong has put the work on the page. Now you can put it in your hands. Let's close this out. I was told that I have no friends. Maybe the person expected shame. I didn't feel it. I've never needed a large circle. I prefer quality, trust, honesty, competence, people who listen, people who keep their word, people who don't perform friendship in public and practice betrayal in private. The first segment examines solitude. No credible study proves that having fewer friends automatically makes a person self-sufficient. The research supports a more careful idea. Autonomous people may be more likely to choose solitude for meaningful, self-directed reasons. They're comfortable spending time alone because the time has purpose. Chosen solitude is not the same as chronic loneliness. Social connection matters. Isolation can damage physical and mental health. A small circle should still contain real connection. Somebody you trust. Somebody who trusts you. The second segment examined the Facebook profile. People increasingly perform life for an audience. Photographs replace experience. Follower counts replace friendship. Visibility replaces connection. Research shows that authentic self-expression online is associated with greater life satisfaction. That makes sense. The greater the distance between your public character and private self, the more work required to maintain the lie. The third segment examines church. Church can create community, teaching, charity, accountability, and fellowship. It can also create hypocrisy, financial pressure, protected leadership, and public religious theater. The Bible doesn't command Christians to pretend. Jesus condemned public righteousness covering private corruption. Paul said giving shouldn't occur under compulsion. Charity requires choice. I can read the book, study it, give directly, help people, pray, seek honest fellowship. I don't need to submit to a liar merely because the liar owns a pulpit. But rejecting hypocrites can't become an excuse for rejecting everyone. Churches contain imperfect people because the world contains imperfect people. The standard is honesty, repentance, accountability, and conduct. The fourth segment examines standards. People tolerate mediocrity because correction creates discomfort. Poor service becomes normal. Broken promises become normal. Ignorance becomes normal. I reject that. If I pay for a service, provide the service. If you make a promise, keep it. If you don't know, say so. If somebody teaches, listen. If you make a mistake, correct it. Standards must apply to me too. I must distinguish ignorance from arrogance, error from dishonesty, imperfection from bad character. If my standards reject every imperfect person, the problem may not be the entire human race. That possibility remains under review. The fifth segment examined education. The 2024 INAF found that nearly 30% of Brazilians between 15 and 64 face functional illiteracy. Almost 3 in 10 struggle to apply reading, writing, numbers, and digital information to ordinary tasks. Brazil's current education problem can't be reduced to an unsupported statement that the country ranks 79th. The OECD's current PISA result provide better evidence. Only 27% of Brazilian 15-year-olds reached basic proficiency in mathematics. Half reached it in reading. 45% reached it in science. 38% reported that students don't listen to teachers during most or all mathematics lessons. 45% reported distraction from digital devices. The problem is institutional, economic, cultural, family, personal. No single excuse carries it. America faced the same direction. Reading scores declined. Large portions of American adults have low literacy proficiency. Schools increasingly produce political confidence without intellectual competence. That's not progress. People here explain America to me without living there. Americans explain Brazil after a vacation. Everybody has opinions. Few have experience. Fewer listen. So yes, my circle remains small. I've been around. I've seen too much to organize my identity around popularity. I've lived through circumstances more serious than somebody deciding I'm difficult. I would say walk a mile in my shoes. Most people can't. Some won't. They want the judgment without the experience. If having friends means tolerating liars, thieves, hypocrites, users, and proud idiots, I'm fine the way I am. But here's the final warning. Don't turn standards into a bunker. Don't confuse strength with permanent isolation. Don't reject the decent people because they arrive imperfectly. A real friend may disagree, correct you, irritate you, require patience. He may not flatter the version of yourself you prefer. The fake friend praises everything. The real friend sometimes tells you that you're full of shit. One is more comfortable. The other is more valuable. I don't need everyone to like me. I do need enough humility to recognize the people worth keeping. A small circle isn't evidence of failure. Sometimes it means the gate is working. I'm Shawn Armstrong. This has been Shawn Thinking Out Loud. Bring evidence, read the book, listen before speaking, and stop counting people who wouldn't answer your telephone as friends.